Yeah. Okay, I'm ready. Let's get this party started. Woohoo! Marketing under the influence. How to bring influencers to your brand party. So why do you party anyway? Why do we go to party? We go to party maybe to drink a little rakia, maybe a little too much, maybe to dance, maybe to sing. Most likely we go to parties. Oh, by the way, I just have to say something, Natasha. I love the fact that you introduced me as Danica. I love that. Actually, I got the American bastardized version of my name. I'm Croatian, but they call me Danica there. But here, call me Danica because it makes me feel at home. So I feel like I'm back in my home country. Thank you. And yeah, and I was bottle fed Slivovic as a child, just so you know. Okay, so anyway, why do we party? We party because we go to commune with other people, right? And so this word influencer, we think it's a new word, but actually it's been around for a long, long time, really since the dawn of time. Because if you think about it, we as a species, we're a storytelling species. We've been on this planet, several hundreds of thousands of years, right? And only in the last 100 or 200 years have we been a reading culture. So as a people, we like to gather around the fire, the spark. We like to gather in the cave with a storyteller who tells us the tales of our ancestors. So that's the kind of people we are as a species. And it's really no different today. Today, we gather around the iPhone, the iPad, and we get the stories from our storytellers. And we all know that, right? But there were some people who didn't get that memo. They were the advertisers. They actually thought that we wanted to be talked to. They actually thought that they could thrust advertising messages at us. They could give us billboards and pop-up ads and slogans, and they could just keep thrusting at us. And that probably maybe could have kept going for, I'd give it maybe 5 or 10 years. And then this thing happened, 2009. Well, that was not a party. Remember 2009? Economy collapsed, right? So when the economy collapsed, suddenly trust, the things that we thought we could trust, our banks, can't trust them. No way. Media, how they missed the boat. Completely missed the boat, right? And most importantly, at that time, trust in advertising was at an all-time low. Enter the rise of the blogosphere. No coincidence. So individuals took to their blogs, they took to their social media platforms, and they began to deliver the news and the stories that we so craved and we wanted to hear. Brian talked about that this morning. You know, the fact that there were no more gatekeepers. Suddenly, our new influencers were not the media greats or that Madison Avenue. Our new influencers were the people that we chose to influence us, our favorite storytellers, right? And anybody have an imaginary friend? Actually, everybody raise your hand. Everybody raise your hand. Go ahead, own it, because you do have an imaginary friend. And your imaginary friend is on Facebook or Twitter. They might be on LinkedIn. You never met them, right? But you talk to them every day. You wait for their blog to come out. They're your bestie, right? So today, our new friends, our new storytellers are sometimes people we've never met, but we trust their every word. We count on their every word. And they influence us in so many ways. There's people like Brian Solis who I met and knew for probably 2 years in social media before I actually got to see him IRL in real life. So now's the point where I break from stories and I use some statistics to drive the story home. These are some very recent statistics and they're very, very compelling. 92% of consumers trust recommendations from friends and families even if they don't know them. And that is over branded content. So we trust the recommendations of people we've never met, those imaginary friends. 3 out of 4 consumers identify word of mouth, ideally word of mouth through their social platforms, as a key influencer in their purchasing decisions. And finally, a whopping 43% of social media users report buying a product after they've liked it, favorited it on Facebook, Twitter, or Pinterest. Nearly half of all consumers go to these platforms, engage, and make purchasing decisions. So it's very simple, a classic tale. Today's influencers are our storytellers, and they influence what we buy, where we shop, what we eat, what's trending. And it's really a lovely bedtime story. I'd rather pick the influencers in my life than have Madison Avenue pick them for me. So before we go into influencers, let's address the influencer types. And sorry, we had to go to Kim Kardashian, okay? Latest news from Kim Kardashian, she hasn't been in a grocery store for 4 years, okay? I really don't care. That's not the kind of influencer we're going to be talking about today. The kind of influencer I really wanted, she's like the OG of influencers, the celebrity influencers, and that's kind of a whole different beast and animal. But the kind of influencer I want to talk about today are the digital storytellers, those people who have built their platforms. It might be a blog, it might be Twitter, it might be Instagram, and they built a platform and a community to whom they tell stories. So those are the kind of influencers I'm going to talk about today, and to talk about how brands are accessing those influencers to tell stories for them. So, Macy's. It is the biggest store in the world. Everybody know Macy's? Yeah? Okay, good. So, 34th Street. I don't know how it's the biggest store in the world, because you'd think they'd have a bigger one in Dubai, right? But according to the sign on the store, it is the biggest store in the world. And I'm going to tell you a story about Macy's, which is a story about my agency and my relationship with Macy's, and an activation that we did with them with influencers. So Macy's as a store, core to their marketing strategy are events. They do events, big events, small events, events in store to get people to come into the store. This is a picture of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and it's the biggest event that they stage. Every year, it's broadcast on television. Before we make our turkey, we watch this. Oh, and by the way, I just have to say this. This year, I guess you can stream it here, right? This year, I'm going to be a clown in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So keep your eyes out, because you might catch 1 second glimpse of me on TV. It's going to be my 15 seconds of fame after this, of course. But anyway, so Macy's is an events-driven, that's totally core to their marketing strategy. And they had these series of events that were popular, but they wanted them to be more popular. They had a group of chefs called Macy's Culinary Council. These were 12 of the top chefs in the country. And boy, the chef last night, amazing. At Dukai, that was incredible. Did I pronounce it right, Dukai? Dukai, sorry. Incredible. But anyway, 12 of the top chefs in the country. This is one of the chefs. This is Marcus Samuelsson. He came to America via Sweden and Ethiopia. He brought all those flavors with him, and he has a restaurant in Harlem called Red Rooster. If you ever make it to New York, you have to go there. It's extraordinary. So they have 12 of the top chefs in the country. They bring them into Macy's stores. They have them prepare food. And Macy's wanted to increase their attendance at these events, because if you walk into a Macy's store, you do not walk out empty-handed, right? So 12 of the top chefs, Marcus Samuelsson is just one of them. They reached out to everywhere. They were taking out ads in newspapers, but they thought maybe we could really drive attendance to these events. We want to crowd these events with foodies. So they reached out to everywhere, my agency, and they suggested that we reach out to foodie influencers. So we went in each region of the country, reached out to foodie influencers, and we let them know things like, hey, Pat Cora, the great Greek chef, she's coming to a Macy's near you, and we would love you to write about this event, share with your community, ignite your community, inspire your community to come to these events. We're going to provide you the date, the time, the location. We'd love you to blog about it. We'd love you to share about it. In fact, we're asking you to write about it for us. We did that, and over the course of a year, attendance at the event tripled. The events were completely sold out, standing rooms only. So this was a huge success of using influencers to inspire their community. Triple the attendance at events, right? Now remember I said to you that we reached out to influencers, food bloggers, food Instagrammers, and we asked them to write about these events, okay? Now at the point when we said to them, here's the date, here's the time, we'd like you to promote this in advance, we were having an exchange with the influencers. So for that, we compensated them. So this ended up falling in the world of advertorial, but it also felt very much like word of mouth, because it was word of mouth, because these foodie influencers very, very much so like to do it. So when I get into the point of compensation, you're going to say, what? You hate those people? And they're influencers? They didn't write about it naturally? Yes, they wrote about it naturally, and we compensated them. Now, in the States, we have laws. We have something called FTC guidelines. And the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, governs any time an influencer is compensated. So these influencers that we compensated to attend those events, to promote those events, in turn, let their readers know, I really love Marcus Samuelson, I really love Kat Cora, but I was compensated by this brand to write about it. So it's very, very clear. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, is one of the ways that we are using influencers is in some ways advertorial, in some ways word of mouth, and whereas it might seem fuzzy, it's not fuzzy as long as the influencer is very, very clear that they were compensated to do this, right? And the other thing that's important is any influencer that we work with, we're very, very sure that they would naturally write about it, that this is something that they would have a natural passion about. So it's something that is very, very authentic and feels very real, okay? So my next story, we're going to go to a little story about some people many of you know, Natasha and Sonia. This is Natasha, Sonia, and me at South by Southwest. And actually, that's a secret story. You'll have to give me some idea to get the true story behind that. But by way of transparency, I work with Domain Me. I'm here to say they're my favorite client. And I work with Domain Me in getting influencers to tell the story of Domain Me. So what's interesting about this is that in asking influencers to tell the story of Domain Me, okay, Domain Me, it's the best possible domain, right? Yes, yes. But now that I've said that, what else am I going to say? I can't keep repeating it. It's going to start to sound like advertising if influencers on their blogs are repeating that over and over again. So the way we work with influencers is to ask them to tell parallel stories, stories that relate to Domain Me, but aren't constantly about, it's the best domain, you should pick this domain. And we ask them to tell stories about all the things that relate to picking your domain. So things like branding, things like digital reputation, some things like choosing your name. And over the course of 1 year, working with influencers, we built out over 100 stories of influencers, all telling good, rich, unique, content-driven stories about Domain Me. And I'm going to zero down to just one story of one influencer and one way you can think about working with influencers. So this is Rachel Matos. She's an influencer. She writes about art, culture, lifestyle, beauty. NBC rated her as one of the top Latinas to watch. So she's very, very influential in the Latina community. So with Domain Me, one of the things that we do is we go to the places, to the parties where the influencers congregate. So I went to Natasha and I said, Natasha, I think we should go to this place where influencers congregate. It's called We All Grow. And it's a conference about this size, but it's completely focused on Latina bloggers and influencers. And I think this is the right place for us, for Domain Me, because Latinas and Latinos in the U.S., they are just killing it in entrepreneurism. They're the greatest rise of entrepreneurs in the Hispanic marketplace than any other group in America. Now, Donald Trump would like to build a wall to keep them out. And I'm here actually to ask a favor of you. If he gets elected, can I come live with somebody here, please? Okay. Serious. Anyway, so we went to this conference, We All Grow, and we really weren't selling anything. I mean, we were talking about Domain Me, but we were really giving influencers an opportunity to talk about their branding. And Rachel Mathos, 2 years ago, sat down, met us at this conference, and said, you know what? I'm thinking about rebranding. And we just had a conversation with her, and she rebranded. She's now artmuse.me. And now, again, this is just one influencer, but to me, this is a story of how Rachel Mathos then is going to be a great storyteller and go out to her community and share why she picked a domain name. So that's what I have for you. I say, wouldn't you like to market under the influence and party with a bunch of influencers? Yeah. Yeah. No, you can see Danica. Danica. It would make my father very happy. Rest in peace.
And now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to have a couple of questions because we are a little bit late.
Did I talk too much?
No.
Okay.
So influencer marketing has been lately seen as a negative thing. Lots of people have negative comments, especially in the community, the marketing community. So how do you make sure this doesn't happen to what you're doing?
What are some of the negative commentary about? Because I just have to say in the States, it's just burgeoning this year. I think marketers are increasing their spend something like by 70% in influencer marketing. And they're seeing huge opportunities.
Okay, I'm speaking about the community and mostly around authenticity.
Yeah. So I think influencer marketing definitely can be misused if you are basically just asking influencers to show for your brand. I think influencer marketing only works when you find an influencer who's naturally passionate about that brand and who would write about it anyway. And the other important thing is, again, we've got these FEC guidelines in the U.S., but, who's really out there checking to make sure all brands are following it? But I think it's so important that brands, whether you have the laws and guidelines or not, are very, very clear. If you're working with an influencer, if you've compensated them, they really should indicate very, very clearly that they've been compensated, not just on their blog, but also on their social shares. So when we work with influencers, we require that they use hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored in any of their social shares. Even if it would be natural for them to share it, even if they're at a Marcus Samuelsson event taking a selfie with him, because I paid them to go to that event, I asked them to be clear, you've been paid, so that there's no fuzzy area.
How do we as brands know that maybe that's
Well, I think it's up to the brands to police. Yeah, so, it's self-policing. You really have to.
Well, you're not like data obsessed. I like data.
Yes.
What can you say about the data regarding influencer marketing?
Oh, my goodness. I love, I've been in advertising and marketing for a number of years, and this is the first time I felt like I could open up the screen and see what was really happening. So with influencer marketing, you see what your influencer says, but then you also see what the community is saying. You see that story unfold right in front of your eyes. You see those comments. We're always looking for what we call messages of intent. So let's say we've been let's say Rachel Mathos talks about how much she loves having artnews.me. A message of intent would be somebody on her Facebook page saying, I'm thinking of rebranding. Maybe I'll consider a domain name. So you can actually see all of that. Now, the typical measurement that we use now is impressions, but honestly, we go beyond impressions. We look for engagement. What are people saying? What are those conversations that are being driven about your brand?
Maybe we should pause here and see. Does anybody have any questions? Hey, that's wrong, right? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
There was an article recently that said the market for influencers is kind of bottoming out, that they're asking for too much money and that marketers in turn are not getting the response that they once were. Do you find that to be true? Do you think that it's just kind of inflation at this point?
Well, definitely some of the higher level influencers are asking for ridiculous fees. Don't get me started about YouTubers. They actually do think they're Kim Kardashian right now, the ones with huge numbers. But, you know, when you're looking for influencers, you don't necessarily need to look for those people with big numbers. You're trying to drive word of mouth conversations about your brand. And I think that as long as there's storytelling, there's going to be influencers that are telling those stories. So I don't see that disappearing. I don't know how it can disappear. And as long as there's social media, and that's not going away, we know that, conversations are going to continue to happen. The true question is, how do you foster those conversations in very real, rich, authentic, non-advertising ways?
Thank you.
There's an influencer in the front row.
How do you find influencers? And I say this because there are articles that are recently published about falsifying numbers and buying fans. And so how do you find it? Do you listen? How do brands find them? Well, I say that just because it's hard to find the influencers because Twitter numbers mean nothing. Instagram,
yes, absolutely. So my agency actually has a network of influencers. So we've got 2,500 influencers that we work with regularly. And here's one of our network members right here in the front row. But the way to find influencers is really to read what they write. And it's all visible. So we use a lot of different kind of search software to find influencers that are writing about what I call parallel subjects or similar subjects to whatever brand I'm working with. And then once you find them, it's just a matter of reaching out with them and developing that bond and that relationship. You know, it's hand-to-hand combat. Everybody is looking for the technology to tell stories. And the truth is, there is no technology that tells a story for you. And there's no technology that makes connections. So you've got to make those individual connections. So, and you know, it's funny because brands for years have wanted to make individual connections with their consumers, and social media is allowing them to do it, and they keep trying to find like some snap way. So they can find all the influencers that relate to their brand, but you really have to search. You really have to read. You really have to look for that influencer that has a natural infinity for your brand. And the truth is, we share everything about ourselves on social media. Anyway, I'm definitely an oversharer. So.
How do you define how much you will pay an influencer? According to what metric?
So we look at the campaign, what we're asking the influencer to do, and then in response to your question, we do at that point look at their numbers, and we look at their potential reach. So an influencer that has a huge potential reach is definitely going to cost more, just as the same as when you're going to do, I hate to compare it to this, but when you're doing an ad buy, you're looking at the potential reach. So we take all those factors into account. But because our particular approach to finding influencers is really doing that deep dive to find influencers that would naturally love writing about that brand anyway, a lot of times the fee isn't so great. So I'm going to use the Culinary Council example again. So Marcus Samuelsson is just this chef that, oh my gosh, he's just huggable and lovable and you want to eat his Swedish meatballs. So when you reach out to a foodie influencer and you say, hey, guess what? I'm going to give you a chance to meet Marcus. All I'm asking is you write about this and you go to this event at Macy's, the fee is going to be less because they would naturally flock to that, right?
I don't think we have much more time, so one more question.
Okay.
What life is
Making connections, and to me, this whole influencer world is about making connections, and I am so thrilled to make so many connections here in Montenegro.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.